Welcome to Women in the Arena podcast, the podcast celebrating women doing extraordinary things in plain sight. I'm your host, Audra Egan, and our mission is to elevate the value, strength, and resilience each woman brings to the world. Without further delay, let's go ahead and start the show. Welcome in, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me again this week. This week, my guest, I cannot wait for you to meet her. I will tell you that the moment I met her, I could not stop watching her, and you will find out why as we get into the conversation, but let me introduce you to her. I'm joined today by Dethra Giles, and she is a four-time TED Talk speaker, and she's amazing. She is also in the top 100 HR influencers. She is the CEO of ExecuPrep, and she has clients that are just tiny little clients like Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, Kaiser Permanente, the CDC, the Army Corps of Engineers, and the Salvation Army. And she's here today with us to talk about a topic that is very near and dear to my heart and something that I have been continuously discovering and talking about over the last couple of years. It is my pleasure and my honor to introduce to you Dethra. Dethra, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
It is absolutely my honor and pleasure to be here and speak to you and your audience.
Thank you, first of all, for saying yes, because you could be anywhere. Honestly, you could be absolutely anywhere in the world, and you chose to be here today with me and with us. So thank you again for saying yes. And I want to talk to you about this topic of something that you had brought up when I got to see you on stage in October. And first of all, before we jump into that, I want you all to picture this. Dethra is not a very tall woman. She's petite, like myself. And she is larger than life. She commands a stage. She also has fabulous taste in clothes. We'll have to describe that in a moment. She doesn't just take up space, she commands it. She does this in such a way because she found one very, very powerful element that we're going to talk to you about today. She found her voice and she knows how to use it. Tell us a little bit about finding your voice, because I know, based on what the conversation that you gave us on stage, that was not always the case. What is this? And women especially struggle with finding that voice inside of them and using it. So tell us a little bit about finding your voice.
So finding your voice is really becoming reacquainted with something you were born with, but got buried along the way. Right? I say find it, and the real word is rediscovering, but finding it means along the way it got buried. And you know how sometimes, back in the day, or the myths are that the pirates would make these treasure maps. And it was because I need to be able to go back and find where I buried my treasure. The same thing is true for our voice, but oftentimes we forgot to create the treasure map. Or we didn't even know we needed a treasure map. And so you're born with this voice. As a baby, you're born knowing I am here, you will hear me, and you will meet my needs, or the world shall stop rotating on its axis. We're born with that. But along the way, we're taught these little messages of it's not okay to take up space. Be quiet. Children should be seen and not heard. If you grew up like me, if you're a woman and you're boisterous, you're being what they would say was mannish. And so calm down, pipe down. No one wants a mannish woman. And so along the way, people have helped us dig holes. Along the way in our journey, we dig our own hole, but people around us throw dirt on top of where our voice is being buried. And someday we wake up realizing, I don't know where my voice is, and I don't have a clue where to find it because it's been buried so deep over decades. I work with clients that I'm helping find their voice, and they're literally 60 plus years old, and they've had it buried since they were 5. And so we have 60 years of treasure hunting to do.
I mean, I relate so much to this because before we started recording, I shared with you that I thought I knew where my voice was. I thought I had it, but I did not. There was so much buried on top of me that I didn't even realize how covered over I was until I started asking other women to lend me their voices by having these types of conversations. It was then that I realized, oh, there it is. And it just got buried under responsibility. It got buried under all of these societal messages that I was getting, especially being a female in corporate America. Please, seriously, how many messages do we get on a daily basis that are conflicting? Too much of this, not enough of that. And you're like, what do you need me to be?
And that's the hard part about it when we talk about finding our voice. I talk to so many people, much like yourself, that will say, I found my voice. And then when we dive into it, I will say, you didn't find your voice. You're doing a very good voiceover, which means you're really speaking on top of someone else's voice, but that's not your voice. That was never your voice. And if you stop and recognize, just because you have or you're demonstrating power in the voice that you're using, it doesn't mean you're using your voice. And so they think, because I've accomplished these goals, because I may be on big stages, I found my voice. And I'm like, no, you're doing a good job of projecting someone else's voice.
Yeah, it's a rude awakening,
It
honestly.
is but for so many people, and we take so long to find it because we reckon it's work. It's work and it's sacrifice. Because once I find my voice, what does that mean for everything else I thought my voice was? And I've built a comfortable life. I've built a comfortable network. I've built a comfortable career off of this voice I've adopted for the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And now you're telling me that isn't even my voice? What sacrifices do I now have to embark upon in order to step into my rightful voice? And that's scary.
It's a terrifying feeling. It's almost like standing on the cliff and looking down. And for me, I had this realization of, who is it that I need to become to fully realize who I really am? And
And
that is terrifying.
And the more terrifying question that really blocks people and makes them stop at the point of really going on the journey of that treasure map and finding that treasure is, who do I have to unbecome?
Oh,
Because we've been comfortable in the person that we've become. That's been the easy part. It was easy to take on the mantra that we were told we supposed to be silent, be behind the scenes, be unheard. I can't tell you how many, especially women, especially minority and women of color that I've worked with, that say, I love being behind the scenes. No, you don't. You were told that. You were told that you love being behind the scenes, that you should be behind the scenes, and oh, it doesn't matter who gets credit. That's a lie. I remember telling myself that lie. Oh, I like being behind the scenes. Cut it out. I love being on stage. I love the lights. I love the camera. I love the action. But for a long time, I lied and told myself I liked being behind the scenes because I wasn't willing to unbecome the person that they told me I was supposed to be.
yeah. I am having a reaction, like a physical reaction right now, because I can feel everything that you're saying. Especially because I got to be on the same stage as you were on last month, not at the same time, but I got to be on this stage. And I was terrified before I walked onto that stage because it was huge. It was a huge stage. It had 2 big giant jumbotrons. They mic you up. They do makeup backstage. I mean, it is a production. And I was terrified. And I was standing on that landing behind the stage, waiting for them to call my name, thinking, oh God, please don't let me pass out or throw up on anybody. Just don't let me do it. But the moment I walked on stage and I sat down, suddenly I was like, oh, I like it here. I really, really like it here. And that was like, in a moment, it was both an exciting and terrifying thought simultaneously.
And it's unexplainable, but that's people will ask me, how do you know when you found your voice? And I will tell them, because your voice takes over. Your voice supersedes the fear, the anxiety, the worry. Your voice will take over. People are often shocked. Mind you, I speak around the world to audiences between 25, and my largest audience was 17,000 people. And
Seriously,
I've done it
amazing.
a long time. And guess what? I still get scared. I still get a little bit nervous. And I feel like the day that I don't get nervous is the day that I'm too prideful and will probably mess up. But it's like you, as soon as I hit the stage, I go into another character, and that character actually has a name, and that's my voice. My voice is like, don't worry, I will take over if you give me the opportunity. And so when you say I was backstage, I was on the borderline of throwing up, I have bubble guts, I don't know what's going on, my armpits are sweaty. They say degree can do anything, but I don't think it was working. I was a hot mess. I got on stage and blacked out. That tells me your voice is saying, if give me the opportunity, give me the chance, I promise you I won't embarrass you. Your voice will never embarrass you. When you find your voice, it will always elevate you.
Yeah, it was evident, and the excitement and terror of finding your voice is so liberating that I wonder if you wouldn't mind sharing some skills or some exercises that some of my listeners can start right now, because I have women literally all over the world that are listening, and I get messages from them and say, thank you for having this person on. Thank you for having this person on. It's helped me start to make some changes. It's helped me to look at things a little bit differently. How can we help some of the listeners start taking those steps to starting to find their voice? Because there are millions of women out there that are walking around with voices that they think that they are their own, but they are not. They are the representative, I guess.
Exactly. They're the avatar that we put up, right?
Exactly.
I remind people that your avatar looks like you, but it's not you. And so when the first step I tell everyone in finding your voice is sit quietly with how you feel with when you give a yes and when you give a no. We often just answer questions. Will you come on my podcast? Yes. And we don't ask ourselves, how did I feel when I gave that yes? Or no, how did I feel when I gave that no? When you ask the question of, Dethra, you know what? And you said, I have this small podcast and we don't have all the marketing, but I think my audience would love. And I ask questions, who is your audience? My yes felt right in my spirit. It felt right in that piece of me that controls how that inkling that we have. And everyone calls it something different. For me, it's my spirit. It felt right. And it said, this is right for you. And we often don't ask ourselves the question of, how do we feel when we give a yes or when we give a no? Your yes that feels good on the inside for some crazy reason, you weren't paying me to come on this podcast. You weren't promising me I was going to be in front of 5 million people. You weren't giving me the world and saying, oh, if you do this, I can guarantee that you'll have 50 million speaking engagements next year. All you said was, hey, you're going to help my audience. And inside of me, when I said yes, it felt like yes. I knew that if I said no to this, I would not feel good about that no. So start paying attention to how you feel when you give your yes or your no. Those things that make you feel like, I don't know why this feels exceptionally well, but it does. That's where your voice begins to reside. And then you can delve down into why does that feel right? Because as big as you, and it's funny you said that, she's petite. I can't tell you how many people meet me in person and they say, I thought you were a lot taller. Like, what? One woman said, I really thought you were like WNBA 6'1" tall. And I was saying, no, I'm just 5'6.5". That's it. But when I say yes, I can feel that. So what you see on stage is simply my yes showing up. That thing in me that says this feels good and feels right. It is my voice that's supposed to, I need this large stage so my voice can take up space because it's not meant for a small space. But when it feels right and you start to acknowledge how you feel with your yes and your no, you're that much closer to finding where your voice is and where it is not.
Start paying attention to your yeses and your nos and stop doing it on autopilot is basically what you're saying.
Oh, please stop. Autopilot is our enemy, especially when we're trying to find it. The second thing is recognize where your appreciation is elevated. And when I say appreciation, people often think that that means the accolades or the money or those tangible things. I'm really talking about the intangible. I'm talking about your appreciation in light of its impact. When people can hear you and say, you know what? I know because of what you did, what you said, how you behave, the impact goes further than what was right here. That's the appreciation I'm talking about. And so when you use your voice, your actual voice, and you find that voice and you use it, the impact goes beyond the moment. That's the appreciation. And so if you're in places where the impact is not going beyond just the moment, you probably haven't tapped into your actual voice.
When will you know that you're there? For myself, it snuck up on me. It was slow and quiet. It did not come in a flourish and a bang. I mean, I didn't know that it was there, that it shown up until one day I felt completely comfortable in my skin and uncomfortable in places that I had tolerated before,
Mm-hmm.
but suddenly could no longer tolerate. It, it was a bizarre thing, and that's also hard to navigate too. When you're like, okay, I gotta not show that this is offensive to me, especially if it's something that, I don't know, might be your job or your family or something. You got to figure out that one too. But how will you know when you're on the right track?
The hard thing about this process is it's a process of knowing versus I know. And the analogy I can give is it's like losing weight. And so many people have been on the weight loss journey. And when you're in that journey, you can't see that you've lost 5 pounds because you see you every day. But if you see a friend that you haven't seen in a while, they're like, oh my gosh, have you lost weight? And you think, thank you for being nice, but no, I haven't. You actually have. And so what you start to recognize is I don't see that I lost weight, but those jeans that used to be a little bit tight, they're still tight. They're just not as tight as they were. I used to not even be able to button this, but it's still tight, but I can button it. And so what you have to do in this process is sit back and kind of see where you're coming from and ask yourself about the discomfort you experience on the journey. Is this uncomfortable because I'm transitioning to the new me? Or is it uncomfortable because I'm doing the wrong things? And those can be two different types of discomfort. Like you said, hey, I was a little bit uncomfortable because unbecoming is an area of discomfort. And so what you're looking for is small little pieces. You're looking for those small inklings that says, this feels better than what I was doing. It's uncomfortable, but it feels better. You're paying attention to those little things that you used to be okay with before. One of the things you mentioned, hey, I used to be okay with that. And now I find it kind of offensive. And that level of offensive starts to grow the more you lean into your actual voice. When you start to acknowledge, hey, I think my voice belongs over here, that little thing starts to kind of disturb you a little bit, like, something feels odd. And as you lean into your voice, that something feels odd turns into, I don't like this. And then as you lean further in, that I don't like this turns into, oh, this I can't. I have tried. I am out of cans and I just cannot. And so pay attention to those little feelings, because there won't be this flash of light struck down. I have now arisen into embodying my voice. It'll be these little slow transitions that if you don't pay attention to those small inklings, you'll miss it.
Because it is definitely subtle. It's not going to show up and say, how I'm arrived, it's here. You have to be very quiet. But if you're doing it right, you've started to spend some really good quality time with yourself.
Absolutely. Time with yourself is invaluable. I talk to you all about it in Empower, but I tell people I take 4 vacations a year, one with my spouse, one as a family, so us and our 2 kids, one girls trip, and one independent trip, just me by myself wherever I am every year, because I need, like, literally I'm going to California in December, and I have to meet with a client, but I'm adding extra days just to drive up the coast of California by myself, because
Good
I
for you.
need that alone time to wrap my head around everything that I need to be processing. We have to spend that time with ourselves. And part of our problem in finding our voice and knowing when we are stepping into our voice is that we have silenced that little inkling I talked about, that spirit that's in you. We've silenced it for so long that when it's speaking to us, we don't hear it because we put it on mute inside of our heads.
Where the 4 vacation things, I think I'm going to start adopting that, because when I have been on business trips, I do try to add on an extra day just to go experience the city. Now, I haven't had a chance to do that in a couple of years, but when I did it previously, it was the first time I went to New York City, and I went a day early and did a touristy thing, did the whole double-decker bus tour, loved it. Absolutely loved it. Spent the entire day by myself experiencing the city, and it was amazing. And it was so rejuvenating and grounding. I I can't wait to do it again.
And let me tell you why that's so important. We're talking about finding our voice, but we haven't learned to appreciate hearing our own voice. And when you want to lean into your voice and find your voice, you're saying, I want to find that thing that other people should hear from me. Because your voice is not just about you speaking, it's about that thing in you that you were put here to do. Because I strongly believe that everyone was created to fill a gap in the earth. So what you were created to do fills a gap that people need. And the longer you don't do it, the more people fall into the hole that you were meant to fill. And so when we don't step into our voice, we're saying, keep falling in that hole. But we haven't learned to sit with our own voice. We don't even know what our voice sounds like. And we're so afraid to be with ourselves and by ourselves that we don't cultivate it internally first before we bring it externally. Like I tell people, when I go by myself, when I do my independent trip, I do nice dinners. I'm talking about reservation only restaurants. And I go in there and I have a wonderful meal. And the sad thing is, I can't tell you how many people come up to me and say, "We hate to see you sitting alone. Would you like to come sit with us?" And I will tell them, I am alone, but I am not lonely. And we haven't made the distinction. And in that alone time is where we get to cultivate our voice internally before we embrace it externally.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting that you say that because you basically were taking yourself out on a date and,
Yes,
and
I
treating
was.
yourself. And there's something to be said about going with the purpose of just treating yourself and enjoying a meal and just being alone with your thoughts. That's it. And
Absolutely.
I think it makes other people uncomfortable by watching you do it because they're not comfortable doing it themselves.
They're not and again, when we talked about why more people don't find their voice, it's because of what we've been told. That's another piece of dirt that's been thrown on our buried treasure of a voice. Oh, because what we know, and people laugh at me because my clients call me university tested and industry approved because I have the academic, all that stuff. I'm the academician, the professor, but I'm also the practical person. And so the data part of it is that piece that teaches us what we learn when we're by ourselves, what society says about being by yourself. And we feed into what that societally has meant to be by yourself, especially for a woman. We're supposed to have a man or kids around. God forbid a woman be out by herself. What the heck are you doing? Are you lonely? Are you unmarriable? Are you barren? Like we have all these things as if these things being alone is a bad thing. So an unmarried woman at a certain age, oh my gosh, what's wrong with her? Nothing. She doesn't like any of y'all. Like, you know, why doesn't she have children? Because she doesn't like kids. Like it's okay. But we have allowed that dirt to pile on. And so instead of going off and saying, you know what, I actually do value time alone. We feed into society's notion that if you're alone, something must be wrong. And when we uncover that treasure, we begin to realize there's nothing wrong with me. There's something wrong with you and your perception of what seeing me by myself means.
Yeah, I can completely appreciate that because I have over the years have become very comfortable in spending time by myself and I really like it. I mean, I really like it. I'm I'm married and I have two children and I adore them all. But there's something about just being spending time with yourself and centering yourself. I find that I need it because if I don't, I feel I feel untethered. I
Mhm.
feel like my foundation is a little bit shaky and I need that time to reset because that's where I do it by
Right.
myself.
And if we don't, especially as maturing people, our evolution can become an assimilation versus an evolution. Because as we grow as a woman, I am a wife, I am a mom, I am all these things, but I can easily assimilate to what's that supposed to mean instead of making those things be a part of the evolution of my voice. And it's that alone time that allows us to recognize the difference and make sure that we're evolving and not assimilating.
Yeah, wouldn't that be awful? I mean, if you just assimilate for the rest of your life, that just sounds that just sounds like torture to me.
But we see it all the time. Like I cannot tell you how many, especially women clients I have that are top executives and literally, like not figuratively, but literally were on the borderline of losing their minds because they were now empty nesters. And while they were top executives running major corporations, running divisions, they had assimilated into being a mother and not evolved into being a woman with children. And so now that their kids are out of the household and there's no one to quote unquote take care of, Who am I? I'm like, wait a minute. Are you seriously running a multi-billion-dollar organization and you are questioning who are you? Because two financially robbing beings are now out of your home. Make it make sense, but it does make sense to me because I do this work and I see it all the time that we often assimilate versus evolve.
There are so many women out there that sentence just took their breath away. I promise you. It just made them catch that breath in their throat because they're like, "Oh my gosh, my kids." Now, I will tell you that we are now empty nesters. And as much as I miss my kids, and I'm not going to tell you that I don't, I miss my kids. I'm glad they're on their own because I have devoted 25 plus years to raising these two human beings. It's time for me to take all of that energy and put it right back here into my life.
It, it is a I want us to see raising independent children as a reward and not as a almost a death. We almost see it as a death. And I'm with you. My daughter just went off to college. She's in her freshman year at Florida A&M University. She's a part of the Marching 100, which is literally one of the best bands in the world. Louis Vuitton paid for them to come and open up Fashion Week in Paris. They've been played Super Bowls. I mean, she's living her best life right now. And I see it as an accomplishment. I'm like you. I think about her every single day. I'm like, oh, I miss my baby. Do I want to go backwards? No, I want to miss her.
Yes.
I absolutely want to miss her because it's an evolution. I see, and what we often see, especially when we're evolving our voices, because once you find your voice, it's not a finality. It's not, I found my voice and now the work is done. It's now an evolution of that voice. That voice will always be evolving. The voice that I find at now I'm a ripe old age of 45 will be very different than the evolution of my voice when I'm 65. And so that's a part of my evolution. I have now gotten one child out to college and I miss her. That's a part of the evolution. But I'm looking forward to getting the second one out, which is in another 4 years. Again, part of the evolution.
Oh, just wait. Just wait. I will tell you that when both of our kids graduated from university, I felt like it was my accomplishment too. Not that I went and did the schoolwork for them, but because we parented them to that point, and I felt like I had graduated at some level too, but not in the same way they did. I graduated from parenting university, I guess. But
Something.
it was such a sense of pride and accomplishment on both their part and mine.
Absolutely.
Because I was like, we did that. Those two humans that are now fully employable and almost completely off the payroll, God willing. um, they we did that. We all of our blood, sweat, and tears made that possible.
And,
Now I
and
get to put that back here.
yes. And that is part of finding your voice. Part of finding your voice is acknowledging your worthiness. We often don't acknowledge the worthiness of taking up space in things that are good. So when our kids graduate from college, we're like, oh, they're such hardworking kids. No, I'm a hardworking parent.
Yeah.
Who do you think drove that child to school? Who do you think? My daughter is literally on the payroll. I mean, she has a monthly payroll that hits because she needs all of these things. And like you said, I'm not there doing the work, but guess what I did do? For the past 18 years, I worked to create a foundation that made you able to do the work. Do you know I had to relearn geometry in the process of raising this child? I have no desire or need to know the Pythagorean theorem. I don't. But guess what I had to relearn? I had no desire to relearn sine, cosine, and tangent. But guess what I had to relearn to ensure that she was capable of being successful where she is? And so what we finding your voice, a part of that is acknowledging your worthiness to have these rewards. Finding your voice and using it and cultivating it and sharing it, lending it is a reward. And many of us don't embark upon the journey of finding our voice because we haven't acknowledged that we're worthy of having one.
That is, oh, that just sends chills up my spine because it is so powerful a statement of being worthy of having one. And it's a retraining of everything that society tells you, specifically as a woman, that you're not supposed to have. And I want to shift just a tiny bit about taking up space because you shared with me this experience that you had that I really want you to tell the audience, which was the yellow suit experience. Because you told me this story. You did not say it on stage. You told this to me off stage when you and I got to speak one on one. And I was like, oh my God, this woman is brilliant. So please tell everybody what is this? What is this yellow suit experience?
Absolutely. And you know what? It's funny because this scenario also speaks to what you asked earlier about how do you know when you've become, when you found your voice, because there's this discomfort in transitioning from not having your voice to stepping into it. And so, like all of you, educated, got my undergrad degree, I have an MBA. I got the memo that professional attire was black, navy blue, dark gray, and if you're feeling frisky, a little bit of khaki. Don't go too far with it, right? I got the memo. And so I would wear my suit. And at the age of 27, I was director of a division, leading an organization of 27,000 plus people. I was the head of an HR division. I had a full staff. And what I noticed is I wore my black, gray, navy blue, and every now and then I was a little bit frisky with the khaki, and people overlooked me. In my head, I knew I hate these colors. Anyone that knows me knows I am not a black suit kind of chick. That is not me. I am patterns, I am colors. And if I have on a black suit, I guarantee you there is something amazingly vibrant on top of it. That's just,
Oh, oh yes, there is. Oh yes, there is. I hope I have a picture of you at Empower. I just want to stop you for a minute because I could not keep my eyes off of her because she was wearing this gorgeous black dress, but on top of it, it was this. I don't know what it was. It was this. I don't know if it was embroidered. I don't know what it was, but it was like a not quite a jacket, not quite a bolero, but it was fabulous. And I knew you were just, I was like, what are you wearing? How did you put it on? It was amazing. It was amazing. And even though she was wearing a black dress, she stood out amongst everybody in this room. And that was even before she hit the stage.
I
And I
think
was like, I don't know who this woman is, but I need to meet her. And then I was like, oh, she's on stage. Of course, this is who she is. But it
that's
was amazing.
hilarious.
So I'm sorry, I digress because it was so fabulous.
It was funny because the person that was greeting me to kind of escort me into the room, she came out to meet me and she saw me. She said, "Oh, okay. So this is what we're doing today." I said, "Yes." But back to the original. So I knew in my head, and my father's Jamaican, so we are a colorful, vibrant people. In my upbringing, I grew up in Miami, Florida, and my husband laughs when we go to Miami because he will say, "So you all literally paint your highways colors? Like what?" That's just who I am, and so I knew that who I wasn't this black, gray, but I thought in order to fit in, I had to conform. I had to assimilate to what they told me it was. And then one day I had this epiphany. Dethra, they ignore you anyway. If they're going to ignore you, you might as well be ignored and comfortable and happy in what you have on. If you're going to be ignored, darn it, look good and be ignored. And so I
Exactly.
decided I'm going all in. I am going to risk it all. And I said, you know what? I'm wearing a yellow suit. And when I mean yellow, I don't mean like a muted yellow. I mean like open the door and you cover your eyes with shades. The sunshine has walked in the room yellow. And I walked into this meeting, a room full of men in black and navy blue suits. No one even had on gray or khaki that day. And I walked in looking like a ray of sunshine. And what was funny about that moment was, though I had been ignored in mostly every previous meeting, the room stopped. And immediately I had everyone's attention. And it was like, well, what are you talking about today, sunshine? It was amazing. And from that day forward, I said, I shall not confine myself to black, gray, khaki. I am going to wear whatever I like. Now, here's the flip side of that. That required sacrifice, because I cannot tell you how many people in my journey of deciding I'm going to lean into my voice, and part of my voice is fashion. How many people have approached me well meaning, saying, you know, you look kind of unprofessional. I don't think that's going to go well for you. I don't think you understand how people perceive you when you dress this way. And there were some opportunities I didn't get because they were designed for the people who subscribed to the memo. But here's the gotcha. That's okay, because someone's voice is in the black, gray, navy blue, and khaki. That's just not mine.
So the yellow suit was that was the beginning of your own private little revolution.
It it was a huge turning point, because it was like I it was one of those points where I realized I can, my voice is worthy. I am worthy of leaning into the voice that God gave me. I am worthy of being comfortable in my clothes. I am, and part of that was yellow. I bright colors, accents. The garment you talked about from the Empower. It was a garment that was made in Ghana in Africa, and I loved it. It speaks to my heritage. It speaks to that thing that people look at and they're intrigued by it and want to know more. And so when people ask, part of my voice is lifting up marginalized communities. So I was happy to be able to say, when someone say, "Where'd you get it?" "Oh, I had it made in Ghana, Africa." And it's made by these women who are often underemployed and simply are trying to make money to further education for themselves and their daughters. It was great to be able to talk about the heritage and how this is a normal garment where I got it from. And so I was able in my presentation of it to lift up voices of people that I would normally want to speak for anyway. And that's what leaning into your voice looks like. It's not just about what you say, it's about the impact you have.
So you are saying, if I want to make sure that I'm interpreting this right, part of the responsibility of finding your voice is helping to lift the voices of the women, the marginalized individuals around you that may not have the same opportunity or privilege that you do, and
Yes.
make sure that they're heard too.
Absolutely. And that's my voice. Everyone has to figure out what theirs is. Yours may be children, someone else's may be abused animals. Whatever it is, I guarantee you your voice is not just to elevate you. If you are looking for your voice because your goal is I need to be the next billionaire and that's it, pause. There is nothing wrong with you being the next billionaire. You are absolutely worthy of being a billionaire. But if that's your only motivation for finding your voice, you're not going to find it, because that's not what your voice was created for. It was created to elevate others as well. And if your voice is only carrying you to the top, that's not your voice.
Oh my gosh. I can't add anything to that. I'm very rarely speechless. Here's a moment that I'm just going to let that sit, because that is so significant that in our quest to hear our own voices and find ourselves, we have got to reach back and bring people along the way with us, especially those that can't
Mhm.
find it for themselves. We need to help
Absolutely.
them.
Absolutely. And you have a responsibility to represent them well.
It's the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to be here forever. And we have got to pave the way to make sure that we leave this place a little bit better than we found it.
Yep.
And make sure we leave space for those coming behind us so they can take up where we left off and make it even better, because
Absolutely.
God knows that we have screwed up plenty.
And it's crazy because it's a term I use and people laugh at me like, what do you mean, Dethra? We are so avid about succession planning in corporations. Who's going to be the next CEO? Are we preparing the next level of leadership? But we're not so good about succession planning as it relates to the world. Who are you creating space for and developing to come behind you and fill the hole that you were supposed to fill? Because in my estimation, the hole that I was meant to fill, when I leave here, there should be more than one person filling that hole. And if I haven't done due diligence to prepare that person, because that's the ultimate finding your voice, the ultimate of owning the room and using your voice is being able to create other people that can find their voice and fill in where you leave off.
Such powerful, powerful message. And we are running out of time, but I want to pause here for a moment. First of all, to say thank you for taking the time once again to be here with me. I could talk to you for hours, but you got paying clients, so I can't. But I want to step back from the mic for a moment and give you open mic for you to leave whatever message that you'd like with my audience.
One of the messages that always resound with me when I'm talking to any group of people, whether it's CEOs of companies, whether it's entry-level employees, whether it's entrepreneurs, whether it's my coaching clients who are top-level executives at Fortune 500 companies, it's the message of figuring out what you were meant and created to do. Who is suffering because you haven't stepped into your purpose? It is identifying your worthiness of being on purpose and the impact you have with people, on people, because you're in your purpose. Don't leave this earth and not find it, because not finding it is unfulfilling. And you know that you are currently experiencing the lack of fulfillment because you know you are not on purpose. I don't care how much money you're making. I don't care how much notoriety you have. I don't care how much visibility you have. You are feeling the weight of not being on purpose. Do not waste another day not finding that purpose. I don't care if it's reaching out to me, someone else. I don't care, but do what you have to do because you are worthy of living a life on purpose.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for leaving that message. That is such a significant thing for me personally. And I hope that it has made an impact on everybody listening. So thank you for leaving them with us with that. If my audience would like to reach out to you, how would they connect with you and where can they find you?
Absolutely. So I am on social media. Instagram is Dethra_Giles. That's DETHRA_GILES. But all of my employeepreneurs, and you have to start following me to find out what an employeepreneur is, will follow me on LinkedIn, and that is Dethra Giles. But I also have a podcast called the Happily Ever Employed Podcast, and that's everywhere you get your podcasts.
That is fantastic. And if they have questions, should they reach out to you on social, LinkedIn, go to your website?
Absolutely. They can go to my website, which is DethraGiles.com. Again, DETHRAGILES.com. But social media, LinkedIn is perfect. Send me a private message, and I promise you it's me responding, which is why you may not get a response immediately, but I will respond.
I encourage everybody to go check out her website, her social handles, as well as her TED Talks. They are phenomenal. You will learn something new and different every time you listen to them. So I please encourage you to go do that. And again, I am so appreciative of you spending time with me and with the audience and sharing just a little bit of your wisdom and all of your years of experience of working with individuals, specifically women, on helping them find their voice. So thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
And thank you to all of you for being here, and we'll see you again next time.
This is just the beginning.
That's our show. I am so grateful for each and every one of you and your unwavering support and your continued belief in this movement that has become much bigger than me, much bigger than just a podcast. It has become this forward momentum that we are all doing together. If you are ready, or you know somebody that is ready to tell your story and share your value with the world, please connect with me. You can reach me at audra@womeninthearena.net. I am so honored and thankful that you will share your story with me, and I'll make sure that it is well taken care of. I will never stop thanking each and every one of you, and I cannot wait to talk to you again next week as we share another woman's story and we celebrate her doing extraordinary things in plain sight. We'll see you next time.